For years, my wealthy mother-in-law, Deborah, treated me like a servant in her home. Tired of enduring her cruelty, I devised a meticulous plan to turn the tables on her. Daniel's voice sliced through the clinking of plates like a sharp blade. "Alina, fetch me some coffee now." I paused, my hands submerged in soapy water. "Just a moment, I'm washing dishes," I replied calmly. "What?" His tone dripped with impatience and disbelief. "Stop that and get the coffee immediately. Can't you follow basic orders?" Before I could respond, another voice chimed in. "And make it quick, you useless wife," Deborah, my mother-in-law, called from the living room. She lounged there, nibbling on a pastry she'd taken from the fridge, her eyes glinting with spite. I glanced at the towering pile of dishes and sighed. "There's so much to do," I murmured. "Leave it for later," Daniel snapped. "Do as we say, worthless wife." His words stung, each one a jab at my spirit. I was Alina, a 28-year-old working mother whose life felt more like a prison than a home. Married at 23, I had dreamed of love and partnership, but instead found myself ensnared by Daniel and his overbearing mother. Our 4-year-old son was the only light in my otherwise bleak existence. We lived in Daniel's family home, a choice forced upon me under the guise of caring for Deborah after my father-in-law's passing. At first, I pitied her supposed grief, but it soon became clear I was merely a pawn in her game of domestic control. Cooking, cleaning, and working full-time were never enough. My efforts were met with scorn, my meals either ignored or harshly criticized. "This stew is so lazy," Deborah would sneer. "Prepare it properly from scratch." "I'm stretched thin and can only manage quick dishes," I'd explain, striving to keep my tone even. "I despise backtalk from my daughter-in-law," she'd retort. "Cook it from scratch." "Why don't you cook? You're skilled in the kitchen, aren't you?" I once dared to ask, instantly regretting it. "Why would I do chores when you're here?" she replied icily. "Are you out of your senses?" Their cruelty escalated over time, shifting from sharp words to a chilling silence. They began ignoring me entirely, as if I were a specter haunting my own home. My presence, once undervalued, now seemed invisible. 5 years passed in this suffocating atmosphere. Daniel and I turned 35 and 33, respectively. Our son grew, but the toxic environment remained unchanged. Deborah, now 63, seemed to relish my misery. One evening, exhausted from work, a painful truth hit me. They viewed my existence as worthless. I was a shadow, unseen and unheard. The only voice that acknowledged me was my son's, and the thought of losing even that small recognition was unbearable. When I got home, I started cooking to soothe my soul, preparing spicy tofu, crispy chicken, and a vegetable stir-fry with pork, hoping to restore some normalcy to our dinner. Papers filled them out and placed them in front of Daniel. His shock was palpable, but I felt only cold determination. "I'm filing these," I declared, my voice unwavering. As I stood there, facing my husband's bewildered expression, I realized I had finally stepped into the light. It was time to reclaim my life. The days following my announcement were filled with icy glares and biting comments, but amid the tension, I found a surprising sense of liberation. One evening, Deborah eyed the meal I served with disdain. "You call this food? A child could do better." I bit back a retort, focusing on my son's delighted face. "Eat up, love. I made your favorite tonight," Daniel chimed in, his tone dripping with mockery. "Oh, playing the doting mother now. What a farce!" My anger flared, but I stayed composed. "I'm just trying to make a pleasant meal for our son." Deborah scoffed. "Don't act superior. You're nothing but a burden here." The air around the table crackled with hostility. Daniel's taunts grew sharper. "So, Alina, have you considered how you'll survive post-divorce? You can barely manage a household, let alone your life." I met his gaze squarely. I've been supporting this family for years. I'm not worried about providing for myself and our son." His smirk faltered, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Deborah jumped in. "Don't be ridiculous. You need us more than we need you." The conversation veered to finances, a topic they usually avoided. "You do realize without my income, this house would collapse," I thought to myself, not voicing it aloud. Deborah sneered, "We'd manage. We don't need your charity." But Daniel's silence betrayed his awareness of the truth. They'd be financially crippled without me. Their behavior worsened over the next few days. Deborah oscillated between feigned kindness to keep me in place and vicious insults when I resisted. Daniel seemed rattled, his confidence eroding as his reliance on my income sank in. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation that chilled me. "She can't just abandon us," Daniel growled. "We need her money." Deborah's reply was cold and calculated. "Don't worry. I have a scheme. We'll make her life so miserable she won't dare leave." Hearing their true intentions laid bare was a wake-up call. They cared nothing for me or our son. It was all about control and cash. That night, a plan took shape in my mind. If they wanted a battle, I'd give them one, but not with words or petty fights. I'd hit them where it hurt most, their pride and their wallet. The next morning, I set my plan in motion. I contacted a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman with a stellar reputation. "I want a divorce, and I want to ensure they don't get a cent more than they're entitled to," I told her. She nodded, her eyes gleaming with resolve. "You've been the sole provider, correct? We'll leverage that." My determination grew stronger each day. I began documenting everything: insults, financial coercion, even minor slights. It was time to make them face the consequences of their actions. As I built my case, I felt empowered. For the first time in years, I was in control of my destiny. The divorce proceedings began, and the atmosphere at home turned venomous. Yet with each passing day, my fear faded, replaced by unyielding resolve. One evening, Deborah tried a new tactic. "Alina, darling, why don't we put this ugly mess behind us? We're family, after all." Her words rang hollow. I met her gaze unflinchingly. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me." Daniel, watching silently, sneered. "Oh, playing the martyr now? You're not as blameless as you think." I felt a surge of anger, but kept my tone steady. "I'm not playing anything, Daniel. I'm just done being your punching bag." The conversation turned to finances again. "You think you can take our son and walk away? How will you provide for him?" Daniel challenged. I smiled faintly, exuding confidence. "I've been supporting this family for years. I'll manage just fine." Deborah's sneer deepened. "You're nothing without us. You'll come begging." But their words no longer held power over me. I knew my worth and the truth. The next day, I met with my lawyer again. She laid out the strategy clearly. "We'll highlight their financial dependence on you. It'll be pivotal in the custody fight and asset division." I nodded, feeling validated. The law was on my side, and I was ready to fight. At home, the tension reached a fever pitch. Deborah's attempts to undermine me grew desperate. "You think you're clever," she hissed one evening, "but you're just a heartless woman deserting her family." I looked her in the eye. "No, I'm a woman finally standing up for herself." Daniel jumped in, his voice thick with anger. "You'll regret this. You can't survive without me." But his threats fell flat. I was no longer intimidated. As the days passed, my preparations for the court battle intensified. I gathered bank statements, recorded their cruel remarks, and collected evidence of their neglect. One afternoon, as I organized my files, my son approached me. "Mom, will we be okay?" His voice was small and uncertain. I pulled him into a hug, overwhelmed with protectiveness. "Yes, sweetheart, we'll be just fine." We're leaving this place and we'll start a new, happy life together. His arms tightened around me, and I knew I'd made the right choice. I was fighting not just for myself, but for his future. The court date loomed, promising the possibility of freedom. I was ready to face Daniel and Deborah to end their reign of emotional abuse. I was ready to reclaim my life and give my son the peace he deserved. It was time for justice, and I was determined to see it served. The day of the hearing arrived, a mix of anxiety and resolve coursing through me. Sitting across from Daniel and Deborah in the courtroom felt surreal. This was the moment everything would change. The proceedings began with cold formality. Daniel's attorney painted him as a devoted husband and father wronged by baseless accusations. Deborah played the grieving mother-in-law betrayed by her ungrateful daughter-in-law, but their act was transparent, their lies fragile. When my turn came, I spoke with clarity and conviction. I've been the sole breadwinner for this family for years. My husband's joblessness and his mother's manipulative behavior have been constant sources of distress. Daniel interrupted, his voice laced with false hurt. Alina, how can you say that? I've always supported you. Turned to him, my gaze unwavering. Support is more than empty words, Daniel. It's about actions, and yours have shown only selfishness and cruelty. The judge listened intently as I presented my evidence. Financial records, audio clips of their verbal abuse, and statements from neighbors who'd witnessed their behavior. The truth was irrefutable. As the evidence mounted, Daniel's composure cracked. Deborah's facade crumbled, her pretense of innocence dissolving. Then came the revelation that sealed their fate. My lawyer submitted photos and documents proving Daniel's infidelity and Deborah's secret affair with Mr. Thornton, a wealthy neighbor. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as images of their compromising encounters were displayed. Their deception was laid bare. Daniel's face paled, his eyes wide with shock. Deborah's expression twisted into fury, her hands shaking. You violated our privacy! She shrieked, her voice piercing. I looked at her, my tone firm yet calm. No, I exposed the truth you both hid for too long. The courtroom erupted, but the judge called for order. The damage was done. Their credibility was in tatters, their lies exposed. As the hearing concluded, the judge's decision was clear. I was granted full custody of our son and a just division of assets. Daniel and Deborah were left with nothing but their ruined reputations. Leaving the courtroom, I felt a burden lift from my shoulders. The years of deceit and emotional torment were over. I had faced my oppressors and triumphed. The sweetest moment came when my son ran into my arms outside the courthouse, his face alight with joy. "We did it, Mom!" he cried, his voice brimming with happiness. "Yes, we did," I replied, holding him close. "We're free now. This is just the start." This wasn't just a personal victory. It was a triumph for anyone who's ever felt diminished, powerless, or unworthy. It was a win for truth and justice. It marked the dawn of a new chapter, filled with hope and the promise of a brighter future. The court's ruling sent shockwaves through our community. The tale of Daniel and Deborah's deceit spread rapidly, dismantling their veneer of respectability. They could no longer hide behind their false image. In the days that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life with my son. But I couldn't deny the satisfaction of knowing they were reaping the consequences of their actions. One evening, as I prepared dinner, an unexpected visitor arrived. Mrs. Thornton, Mr. Thornton's wife, stood at my door, her eyes red from unshed tears. "Alina, I heard about everything. I can't believe what Deborah did," she said, her voice breaking. I invited her in, offering tea. As we sat, she poured out her grief. I trusted her as a friend and neighbor. To think she was involved with my husband. I listened, offering comfort. Deborah's actions had caused far more harm than she'd intended. The next day, I ran into Daniel in town. He was a shadow of his former self, his bravado replaced by defeat. "Alina, can we talk?" he asked, his voice barely audible. I stopped, facing him. "What's left to say, Daniel?" He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "I'm sorry for everything. I didn't realize how much I depended on you." His belated apology reflected the shift in power. He'd lost everything, his pride, his home, his family. And in that loss, he'd finally glimpsed his own failings. Deborah faced the harshest backlash. Her affair with Mr. Thornton not only destroyed her reputation, but also landed her in legal trouble. Mrs. Thornton filed for divorce and sued her for causing emotional distress. Neighbors whispered about Deborah's plight, painting her as a woman undone by her own schemes. I saw her at the supermarket one day, rushing through the aisles with her head bowed. Our eyes met briefly, and the resentment and defeat in her gaze were unmistakable. "You ruined me," she muttered as she passed. I watched her retreating figure, feeling a mix of pity and vindication. "No, Deborah," I whispered to myself. "You brought this on yourself." The tides of justice had turned decisively. Every lie, manipulation, and act of cruelty they'd inflicted on me had come full circle. Their actions had caught up with them, and the consequences were irreversible. As I watched their downfall unfold, I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. But it wasn't just about their suffering. The true reward was the freedom I'd claimed. The greatest revenge wasn't vengeance. It was living a life of peace, strength, unshackled from their toxic grip. My focus returned to what mattered most, the future I was crafting for my son and me. We were free now, liberated from the prison they'd built around me. I had broken free, and I was embracing the life I'd always envisioned. This wasn't merely a tale of retribution or triumph. It was a story of emancipation. It stood as a testament to my resilience and fortitude. I had seized control of my fate, shattered the chains of abuse, and freed myself from their oppressive manipulation. Looking forward, I knew the future was bright, and the best was yet to come. I was no longer their captive. I was free, and the world was mine to conquer. Thank you for watching Story. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more real-life stories.